I gotta show you something. Left-wing media is breaking apart into two as some rational elements break away from the rejected far left to save themselves. That's exactly the impression I got when Jon Stewart put some pretty stark new realities of America to former White House press secretary Jen Psaki. And I think it reveals a lot more that I need to tell you about. Watch this before we get into it.
I will say, broadly speaking, what I'm going to say Democrats, I'm going to say people on the left do not do that the right does very well is support within the system each other. I'm serious. And what I mean by this is this, right?
Yeah.
Theo Vaughn appears on Joe Rogan's show, right? He promotes what Joe Rogan's doing. But they all promote all of the things each other are doing and what the elected officials, I guess, are doing too. And the left is a little bit more kind of discombobulated in terms of supporting the different entities on the left. There is not a left ecosystem that matches the right ecosystem.
But Ailes didn't do that either. It was the principle, the ideological principles, not the party. He and Murdoch the same way. They're promoting an ideological worldview, right? That they believe is correct. And Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, I think, are different animals than any of this. I wouldn't say I don't think they're part of any machine.
Don't you think they're but they are still in the right wing ecosystem? Wouldn't you agree?
No, I would think they're in. No, I would consider them in a more probably libertarian comedic complex.
And here's the sad part. Both Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn are two of the worst examples that Jen could have picked for that. Let's not forget that Joe Rogan himself for the longest time supported a literal socialist like Bernie Sanders before moving to an independent like RFK Jr. late last year, then endorsing Donald Trump just the night before the election. And even a comedian as politically independent as Theo Vaughn isn't safe from being put in this right-wing box. Just how far does the modern left want to needlessly keep adding to its list of enemies? By the way, we're speaking the hard truth that no one else is, so please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss out. Now, what's crazy is that this is the kind of exact mindset that has driven these names away from the left in the very first place. That even includes Bill Maher, but in no way does that put them in the Trump ecosystem, whatever that means, and failing to recognize that there is such a thing as the disillusioned center left is precisely the reason the Democrats lost this election with such a public mandate against them.
You know, more along the lines of, and if you watch or listen to their shows, a lot of times it's just pure goofing off.
Has nothing to do with politics, and oftentimes, but
almost entirely.
But they are supportive of the Trump enterprise, is what I mean. So maybe I'm loosely putting them in that category.
I think they are supportive, but not. They are not relentless in the Trump enterprise. They are not Charlie Kirk. They are not Ben Shapiro. They are very different animals. They are not invested in the shit that you get picked up and go to the headlines of media. But on balance, that's not what their shows are about. On balance, Ailes never took his foot off the gas. Never. It was there was not a wasted moment. And did it still with an eye towards producing very watchable television. Right? That's missing. I think it's missing from the media is a sense of how many times have you heard, Jen? Our job is to call balls and strikes. And no, you're not. You're Upton Sinclair. So get on it.
I don't say that. I don't think most of the people on MSN. I know what you're saying. I mean, look, this moment of the last 3 weeks has exposed exactly that issue. This notion that, and I think a lot of the media is guilty of this, is we have to be equal and down the middle.
For that, I think Jon Stewart is smart enough to not go down with the sinking ship, not of the Democrats and not of their media mouthpieces. And here's what's interesting. Jon is right about the direction that Roger Ailes took Fox News until a few years ago, and it was in response to a left-wing media establishment, which drew a lot of its media and ratings from Donald Trump about a decade ago. But that strategy has failed. It has failed for the right as much as it has for the left. The only difference, well, it's that it is the skew and hyper-partisan of mainstream media that destroyed their credibility with the Trump base, eventually catalyzing the creation of an alternative media landscape that is even more powerful than the legacy media today. So whose fault is that, and why are we seeing this disillusioned new strategy from the legacy media to go even crazier and putting up a false front against the Trump base in a desperate bid to revive ratings? Because when you do that, you accelerate your own demise, like we saw Rachel Maddow do just last week when she was caught lying about Elon Musk's supposed Tesla contract with the Trump administration for $400 million worth of armored vehicles.
Elon Musk has apparently somehow convinced the United States government, specifically the United States Department of State, that the taxpayers of the United States of America should spend $400 million buying, quote, armored Tesla production units. Isn't it great and definitely not at all illegal or profoundly corrupt? Definitely not ripping us all off to pay themselves, right?
The only problem, it was done under the Biden administration and hadn't been drafted into a contract to begin with. Plus, it's now scrapped from the government procurement list as confirmed by both Elon Musk and the State Department. So what do you see from Rachel Maddow? A correction on air? An admission or retraction? Nothing. She just left nearly 2 million of her viewers to figure that out by themselves, which basically means leaving them a complete false impression. And I think that's exactly the kind of snobbish attitude to their audience that Jon Stewart was talking about in the modern left-wing media. And it couldn't have come at a worse time for Rachel Maddow, given how Donald Trump is already filing lawsuits left and right against media organizations like CBS and ABC over the last few months. And maybe that's why we're seeing even the modern left-wing media fraction into two, just like we've seen happen in the Democrat Party and the progressive voter base that has been left out in the cold by the far left. Watch now how even places like CNN with Dana Bash and Scott Galloway are clowning establishment Democrat leaders for their tone-deaf and honestly cringeworthy attempts at attention buy-holding rallies and trying to build some sort of public movement against the Trump administration.
You recommended, I was listening to your podcast last week, and you recommended Democrats should put up more of a fight and go down to these federal agencies, bang on the doors, demand access. Well, maybe they were listening. They did that. They've gone to USAID, the Department of Education. It hasn't had much of an impact. So what now?
Yeah, Dan, I was wrong because it looked more like a seniors home and a canceled Jell-O night. It just wasn't optically a good moment for us. In terms of what we should do is be more optimistic and future looking.
See what I mean? None of this is isolated from the other. That demise of left-wing media, the loss of the Democratic Party, and the rise of an alternative media landscape over the last decade are all connected by the threat of political polarization, and by that, I don't just mean between the right and the left, but also between the far left and the moderate left. But let me know in the comments if that's how you see it as well, because I think that's an unmistakable conclusion you come to when you zoom out over the entire past decade.